All right, we'll get going. Good morning, everyone. Thank you all for coming. My name is Jim Barry. As it says, my Drupal username is SoloTandem. If you want to look me up, see what I've done in terms of modules and things, or comments and all that sort of stuff. But this presentation, I suppose the history of it, or kind of where it came from, is just working with different clients and different people's the Drupal users, you know, the guys that building the sites, the guys that are developers, whatever, and kind of seeing how people use fields, and you know, just kind of sitting back and reflecting on that and some of the kind of the quirky things that everybody seems to do or that you seem to run into, and also kind of a recent project that's gotten more and more complicated, and we have more and more node types and all this kind of stuff, and we keep getting more and more fields. And I keep watching, you know, the database. You know, it's like we got just tons of these tables in the database, and I'm going, is that really what core was intending to do? Isn't there this, you know, some way to do this in a little different way? And so this presentation will kind of touch on some of those things. All right. So again, so some of the goals I had, so basically what I've done is made some changes to Core's field API, kind of how things work and how you do some stuff through the interface. But some of the goals for that was to, let's try to reuse these storage tables. So we've got lots and lots of field tables out there in our database because we make so many fields and stuff. So maybe we can reuse them by fields of the same type, like all the email fields or the text fields or the, you know, whatever they might be. And to be able to actually clone a field instance, which you really can't do in core as it stands. And just to kind of clean up some of the user interface, or some, I think is kind of confusing how fields are listed, like when you go in views and you're trying to pick, okay, I want to put this field on my display, and you get an interesting list. At least I think it's kind of interesting. And the last point is that minimize changes to the contract being the API that Core has, the field API, the API being the function calls, like if you want to get certain information, you have to give me certain information stuff. So I don't want to change that because that would, you know, you change that, you mess up all these contrib modules out there and all that kind of stuff. So if we can minimize those changes, that would be a desirable thing. So here's a couple of examples. So what if we have fields that are the same type, like text fields? We have a name field, email field, whatever. Typically now, you know, what most people are going to do, they're going to have two different fields, right? So one's called field name, one's called field email, something like that. You end up having, well, I mean, that's, I guess, enough. You end up having two different tables, but it's like really they store the same thing, just a piece of text. So why do I need two sets of tables instead of just one? So that's kind of what I'm asking that question down here. Maybe we could combine them as this field data text and then just put both things in there and stuff, which you sort of can, sort of can't with core. Another example would be if we have the same field, like text here, so it's an email field, but we want to have different settings. Settings would be like the example says, one of them has only one value, and the other has a bunch of values. You can't do that with core now. Is everybody aware of that? Do you know what that particular setting is called? What? I mean, it shows up in number of values or something, right? When you go on the field page or whatever, but it's called cardinality or whatever in code. So it's like how many things. Well, you can't do that in core, which seems kind of quirky. And that was one of the things that I, working with a client, and I asked the guy, he was actually the Drupal technical guy, and I said, so how come you got, you know, like an image field? You got image here and image there. He says, well, because I want one on this one and I want 5 on that guy, and I can't do that, so I end up with this. And so it's like, to me, you end up with this mishmash of all these crazy field names and whatnot. We'll touch more on that. So anyway, so let's kind of go through the current field API. Now, is that clear to everybody? I think y'all kind of know what this is, but so this is just so a sample little site. We've got four node bundles: city, county, state, and nation. So they're kind of all, you can see the relationship between them, right? So these are all one entity type being the node, and these are its bundles, which are also called content types for nodes, right? And so then if you went, there's a one page and it shows you a list of all your fields. And it's like, so each of these being a node, we automatically get a body field, right? And so it has a field name, a body. Its type is long text with summary, and it's used in those 4 different guys. And so if we go back, we actually have a sample one here that doesn't have anything on. I removed the body field from him, so he doesn't show up in that list on the right. So then you come to this page and we say, okay, so what is it we can do on this page? Everybody's familiar with this page, I assume, right? So what actions are available here right now? And that may sound like it's an obvious question, but it's like, give me the obvious answer. Huh?
You're missing one.
Missing what?
I don't see add existing field.
Ah, good point. It's not there. And why would it not be there?
Somebody hacked your code around.
Let's go back to this.
Yeah, you don't have any existing fields.
I don't have any that aren't used already, right?
All right.
So it doesn't show up. So I haven't hacked core for that. So, but I've given these, if you'll see, let's see if this little pointer works here, but so like the label, each of them says body on node and then the bundle type, just so we can distinguish them as we go through some of this stuff. But basically it's the same, the same kind of field, right? So you can add a new field like you're saying. I can pick the type and the widget and all that kind of stuff on this page. But it all relates to, so I'm on the node city bundle. I'm adding stuff to that bundle, right? Now, so this just kind of show you. So it's like I put the bundle name in all these things just so we can kind of see what it is and the number of rows, so we can see that there's 5 on there. So these are all, what do we call? These are what core calls instance settings, right? We'll kind of touch on the terminology, but it's kind of hard to talk about this without talking about the terminology before you kind of define the terminology. But anyway, so now we'll come to this sample one, and now we get the thing that he said we were missing before. So sample doesn't have a body field, so sample can add something else here, right? And that's the thing that it's not doing. So how many people really use this thing, add existing? How often do you use it? Or how do you use it? Anybody just throw something out?
I avoid it.
You avoid it? Why?
I don't know. Separation of disciplines and structures, architectures.
What do you mean?
I don't know. I just, even though I have like 5 content types and 2 of them have image fields, I'll make image underscore something, image underscore something. I separate tables.
Okay. Who has a opposite? You have somebody that uses it.
Just like the tags, right? You only use tags across content types. You
Right.
use a term reference and you reuse it.
I would reuse that.
Let's see. Okay.
I
Go.
would reuse
Date.
Date.
We have a lot of forms and they all have a year that needs to be associated with, and we reduce it across the content types for the different forms.
So my reaction to just looking at like what John just said is like, so tags is created by core, body's created by node. So everybody like, okay, they get those, but it's almost like the next step, they didn't realize that they could do that themselves and do like you just said with date. I mean, I think I met a lot of people and talked to them, and they're the technical guys helping to build the site, and they didn't realize they could do that. I mean, it's sitting there, but like, I don't know, so I'm not sure how many people do it. So anyway, so now we'll go through this. So we get this one choice. Can you read that, what it says there? It says long text and something about body, and then it says body on node state. Why does it say body on node state?
That's the label when you create the base field.
But there's 4 of them. There's body on node city, county, state, and nation. Why does it pick state?
It's the base.
Huh?
That's the base field. State is the base field.
Why? Base in what sense?
It's first.
Yeah. It's the first one you made. So.
No?
I think they were made in city, county, nation, state.
It was the last one?
It's coming through because it's alpha order. It's alpha order. That's it. So what am I picking? So that's why it's in there. And we'll talk about views and stuff later. So now I pick that thing, and I'm gonna change some stuff. So it keeps that particular label, body on node state, and all that stuff. And then I go in here, and I've got body on node state. But you notice that where's that help text? And I get 20 rows. I don't know if you remember that it was 5, I think, or on one of them, right? And so these are defaults. This is blank, and that's 20. So you didn't really copy that field. You sort of just got its label and its type. I mean, that's kind of what you got with core. And I'm like, don't you kind of think of sometimes, don't you think feel like you're copying it, add existing? I mean, what does that suggest? I mean, am I reusing this thing or what, right? So, all right. So we didn't really get a whole lot. So then here's an example, I guess, just touching on adding a view. So we say, okay, I'm going to start out here, and I say I'm going to create content of type city. So I'm giving it that little filter and all that stuff, so nothing terribly interesting here. Then you go into this and you say, well, let's add a field. Okay, so here's all the body fields. So what are these things? So again, the first one there says I'm body on node state. Again, why? Because it's alpha. And it says I appear in all these other bundles. And then I got these interesting little things that says body, node, nation, city, county, all that stuff, and it says these are aliases. Ooh, sounds like alien.
How is that alpha?
Country appears before the state.
It's last.
It's reverse alpha?
Well, it's last. So if you're iterating through a list and they're all body, like you're making an array of keys, the key is body. And so I get city, then I get county, then I get nation, I get state. Bam, he wins because he's last. That's how the code works.
Oh, the array's built out, but you get the last one.
You get the last guy. Last guy standing wins. So this you got this. So it's like, so what does that mean? So can I pick all of these? Does it make a difference if I pick either one?
Anyone's the same.
Why?
Because they have the same base field.
Same base field. So then what we're saying is views really doesn't know the difference between the instances?
Doesn't care.
You care.
This is a help user to pick out.
You care, don't you?
Well, your filter foreign keys on the node ID.
Yeah, which is kind of an odd thing, isn't it? It's like, how come it's not right here?
It would really depend upon why you're finding it as body and not something else.
Like,
If you want to share information across different types, or be able to compare information across different types, and using body in multiple different types, makes sense. But if you don't want to share that information or be able to compare across types,
well,
why
but,
would you keep using body over and over and over?
well, I mean, node gives it to me, right?
I know.
But, I mean, it's not, I don't know if I'm sharing that field and stuff. Each node I make has its own set of text and stuff.
Right, but I've created content types that were distinct, but they shared ideas, and I needed to be able to compare those types to each other. And the only way to do that is to make sure that they were using similar field names so that I could reference or distinguish.
Yeah.
You know, and so, I mean, well, the body's going to be there if you need. It's always going to be there. Are you going to use it?
Okay. Well, let's keep going with this. So it's like, so I said, let's say, what did I say? We pick one of them. And I guess, so I picked like city or county, but here's what comes up. So back here I actually checked like, nation, city, or county, one of these guys. But when you then come back to the next page, it says I'm on body node state. So this alias thing seems to be kind of, and I get, by default the label for body node state, not the other guys, stuff like that. And then you, of course, configure it how you would. And then that's how it shows up in the view. So we see it over here, it's body on node state. All right. So we kind of touched on some of the things. So like a typical website, at least what I've seen, and you guys can comment and stuff, we have different kinds of entities. You can read those and bundles and things on, whichever one that makes sense to do. And then we typically end up with this, I'll call it bundle space naming convention, kind of like what you just said with the image, right? I put image this bundle, image that bundle, or something like that, right? And I end up with this mishmash of interesting looking names, and you get different people over different times who change their naming convention. And so for those of us who are like consistency, it kind of annoys you a little bit, right? Because sometimes they abbreviate the bundle if it's 2 words or something like that. Anyway, so you get this interesting set of field names. Everybody agree with that, or everybody, some people don't have that problem? All right. And then, of course, what do we know about core? It's like there's limitations on how long that name can be, right? And core tacks on this lovely field underscore business to the name of your thing. So you might type in image bundle extra, but then you get field underscore, and the whole thing is limited to how much? Anybody know?
32 characters.
32 characters, yes, sir. And then you of course, really you're limited sort of 26 that you get to pick, right? Because they're picking 6 for you. All right, so. So then we come down, so kind of under the covers or whatever, what does this look like, in the database, right? We've got a bunch of different tables. I don't know, everybody, who's familiar or not familiar with these tables? So like, there's one that's called field config, there's one that's field config instance, all this kind of stuff, and then you have these data tables. So this is core's terminology. In the field table, they have a mixture of things. They have storage related stuff, like what's the storage module it's using. They'll keep the indexes on the table if you're using a database and all that kind of stuff. But then in addition to that, they have fieldy kind of things, or things that we talk of as fields, like the field name. They'll have the field type and stuff of that sort. Now, and the cardinality. Remember that cardinality is the how many of those I get. I got images. I want 1. I want 3. I want as many as I want to put on there. That's stored in this first table. The instance table is kind of what I think of as a field. And so the instance, what's the difference between field and instance? Who can give me a 3-word answer?
I mean, the instance tells which entity or which bundle the field belongs to.
Yeah, it associates that field thing with the bundle. So it also then stores the entity type and the bundle that all this stuff's on, and any other of those instance settings, like we saw the number of rows and the help text and that stuff. That's all stored in there. Okay. Then these field. Every time you make a field, you get 2 tables. The data one and the revision one. So data is like what it currently is, and revision is this like history of all that stuff. And the XXX is whatever field name you gave it, image A or something like that, right? You get 2 of these tables every time. So if you've got a site with 100 fields, you've got 200 of those little storage tables written out there. Or potentially do anyway. So when we use this add existing thing, all we really got out of it is that we didn't get another row in that first configuration table. And we didn't get 2 more of these guys. So we shared it. We get another row in here because we got to keep track of, okay, this field is now being used on another bundle, da-da-da-da, and all that stuff, right? So again, if you've got, from my experience, I haven't seen a lot of reuse. So it's like if I got 100 fields, I got 200 tables, it's like, and it gets, larger and larger from there. So now, again, I guess because of what core really does, that add existing is probably more like, reuse that row in the table or something, where it's storage reuse more than it is field reuse or something like that, right? So I think most of us said they've used add existing, at least to some degree. You're not a big fan of that sort of thing. Just from working on this and kind of looking at code and things like that, my sense is that it's not used a lot, simply because I've run into things in certain modules in certain places, like even views or whatever, where it doesn't work if you did it. And so it seems to suggest that it's probably not terribly widely used in practice, or at least not very extensively. So, all right, I guess so. Anyway, so what do we think? We've touched on some of these things. So what are the constraints to reuse a field if you wanted to do it?
There's some global settings that you can't deviate from.
All right, there's field settings you have. So here's the thing. So it's like we've got these constraints. You've got to be willing to go with that field name. So if I called it thingamabob, I got to use that same name everywhere. And so if you're, and the cardinality thing, and then the field settings. So it's like, so if you're the guy that's writing code or something like that, and the field's called thingamabob, you go, huh? You're writing code and you go, I got entity thingamabob. I'm like, what is this thing? But if you named it, and if you tried to read it, so it was the image here, but over here, I don't know, maybe that's not a bad name. So we'll call it email. So it's a text field. So the one guy, it's actually an email field, but the other, it's some username or some other piece of text. But again, down in your code, you'd still be calling it entity email, and it'd be rather confusing. It's like, so that again is a limitation. If I try to scrunch this stuff together with core, I get problems somewhere. Somewhere down the line, something doesn't quite make so much sense. Okay. So then it kind of caused me to sit back and go, what exactly is all this stuff? At least the questions I got from the way core is doing it is like that they think that if you've got field settings, then they think there must be some sort of field data. But it's like I challenge someone to give me some field data in core's terms of fields, which is a thing that's not attached to an entity or a bundle. It's just a thing, right? A field is this field type of thing. But there is no. I mean, can anybody give me an example? All the data we have on stuff I work on, it's on this entity, this bundle. It's associated with that thing, right? So there is no field data. So I question why we have all these field settings. Doesn't seem like that makes much point. And then even this terminology, this field and instance thing, just seems like a weird split of the concepts. And we'll talk on this a little more. So we'll jump into the next part here. It's like, so let's talk about maybe making some changes to the field API. So what core calls a field, let's call storage. That's really more what it relates to, right? When you make this fieldy thing, you get those two tables and all that kind of stuff. And the only thing we're going to try to do, so this goes back to those goals on the first slide, not that anybody remembers those, but we'll try to just keep legitimate storage-related settings. And there are a couple here and there, like the text field. If you do a basic text field, you get to set the length or something like, probably everybody leaves it as 256 and then they go on, but technically that would be it's a storage constraint, right? It's how long that field is, how much data it can take. Entity reference does a foreign key to the types of entities that it's going to reference. So if you're using entity reference to do a taxonomy versus node versus this versus that, you can't combine them. You got to have one for each of those different things you're going to reference, and that's because it's keeping this foreign key in the database. So okay, we'll go with that. It's a legitimate thing. I think GeoField's got some storage engine thing that falls into the same category. Now, on the field, so what core calls instance, we're just going to call field. And so this may get a little confusing, some of the slides, when I go back and forth between field, instance, all that stuff, but try to bear with me. So we're going to move all the field settings, go onto the field, including cardinality and this interesting thing called translatable, which doesn't usually show up in user interface. Probably few people use it, right?
Is this your roadmap for D9?
Yeah, possibly so. All right. So then, some of this, what I ended up doing, so it's like, so we said field is now storage. So we have a storage name, we have a field name, and then we'll talk about this, what the differences are here. So suggestion here is that, so field relates, or the storage relates to these tables, these database tables, right? They're just whatever we want to call them. So I'm suggesting that we use some kind of naming convention, or at least what I tried to do here, is that we name these tables based on the field type. So we got list text, and we got image, and we got entity reference, or something like that, right? And the underscore A's, or if you've got more than one of these, I'd have an A and a B and a what?
But some of that's changeable after the fact.
The field name?
Aren't you invoking like the widget type of thing? I can change from drop-down list to rail buttons to checkboxes?
No.
Okay.
I mean,
It's still a text list.
it's still a
yeah.
list text
Storage,
field.
data storage.
Of course.
That's not the widget. So
Forgive me.
the exceptions we left in were body and comment body because they're defined by core, and you'd probably mess up a lot of things. So we leave them, instead of calling this what's called long text with summary or something like that, we left it as body. So we go with that. So the thing with this is that, because these, so just like the field names had to be unique, right? You can't call it poo and poo in two different places or something. So that had to be unique. So again, because it relates to storage, you're making database tables. They can't have the same name to be, they won't be different. So this name's got to be different. We can use it on multiple fields, but only once per bundle because of the way the columns are in those storage tables. They only have entity type and bundle. So you can't do it again. All right, any questions on that? That makes sense? The field name, so again, now here, let's try to name it like we do now. So address A, address B, da 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 da, stuff like that, right? So the double underscores are there so it's easily parsable, if you will. And so this again, so the constraints on the field name is that it would be unique to this entity type bundle thing. And that is a concession. Remember on the first screen I said that the goals were to not change the contract? Well, that's a concession to that we now need to keep this field name unique so that when people make function calls and stuff, life stays the same from their standpoint. So it has some negatives to it, but we'll touch on those again. Okay, and so this name would be used if anybody ever export their views and all that kind of stuff, you use features, whatever, you export junk, right? So this name, these underscore A names would show up in there. You'd probably end up seeing them, I think views that shows you that actual field name, so you'd see the stuff in there as well. But most of the time, you probably don't really care about what that is, right? You select it in the UI, and the way you go, you export it, and da 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 da. Now, this attach name is probably more useful for the guys that are writing code and all that kind of stuff. So it's like, again, that the underscore A stuff is a concession to I don't want to mess with too much. So I'm going to have these address fields on different bundles. So I got A and B, but when I'm writing code, I just want to call it address. I don't have to deal with all the C. It says A, B, C, where was I? All that kind of stuff, right? It's just the same field from my standpoint. So it's entity, whatever that attached name is, and all that stuff. If that makes sense to you, then you know what I'm talking about. If it doesn't, it probably doesn't matter, right? So these things, the attached name is not unique. It can be shared across fields, all that kind of stuff. So it's kind of really like the way we'd like to have some things. We really like to have that on the field name, but for the moment we can't do that. So again, now fields share a storage name, but they're different. They can be terribly different, right? So list text is the storage, but the field name is email or something like that. And we can then combine these fields into the same storage table and stuff like that. So what we can do right here is we can end up with a lot less tables. So like that 100 fields or something, I guess, well, I use this example because this is probably similar to a site I've got right now. We've got, 800 tables when you consider both the data and the revision table. It's like you can squish this down to 50 or maybe even less, that's right? Because what I said here was that you need n of each field type, where the n is the bundle that has the most of that field type. So if you've got list text, 1 through 10 on a particular bundle, you got to have that many, because we said we can't reuse those field tables, right? So whoever's got the most of the type, he determines that. Add up all those most numbers, and you get how many tables you need or how many fields and stuff. Okay, which to me, that right there is a big improvement. I mean, just getting rid of all this clutter in the database is worth something. So, all right. So now we'll go back. So now this is the same content, but in this new revised, or whatever I called it, field API, right? So we got the same city, county, nation, state, all that stuff. Now they each have that body field, but now it looks like this. So we have body A, B, C, D, and I actually added a couple other fields just to kind of make a little more stuff and whatnots, right? So now they show up individually. And they don't have this, and if we get the views or whatever, they won't show up as aliases, they show up as themselves. So now we come back here. So this is the city guy, and again you can see, so he's got two fields, body on node city and roads on node city, and then what they are, list text. Now who knows what list text, where does it have its settings in core? What is a list text? What do you get to set on it? Allowable values, right? Which, like, 1, 2, 3, 4, A, B, C, D, street names, city names, something, right? You get to put all those, but where are they? They're field setting. They're not instance, right? So right there, that's one of those things. Like, you got all that the good stuff down there on the field. You can't really reuse it unless you just unless you want the same list. But I tend to find that people don't want the same list. They just want the field kind of thing to be used. So here you can see, though, this allowed values list. We are in the instance settings here. So this has been modified these allowed values are up on the instance, the field stuff's down below, you can't see it. Here's your cardinality, the number of values that's on the instance, and all the rest of the stuff was there before. And then, so now we're on the nation guy and we say, oh, now we go add existing, and I've changed that to say clone the field, because now we're actually really going to, ooh, you pick one, it makes a difference which one you get, because you're going to get the settings that were on there. And you know, you may want to change them later, but at least maybe that's you pick the one that's the best starting point for you. So, I don't know, I guess I highlighted roads A, which is on the city guy. So then we come in here, so I change this thing, the machine name, field name, right? Huh?
So your machine names are now no longer tables, but
Right.
field settings in the field type table. The tables are named after the field type,
Right.
and the machine name is now an entry in that table.
Yes, they're separate.
Gotcha.
Yeah. So I changed it from, because it would come up as node A, or roads A like that, so I changed it to C, make it different, kind of keep them A, B, C, D by content. I've changed the label over here, and away we go. But now we come over to this, and it's like, oh, we got the same, we got those, we got 4, we got all that stuff, right? I think that's better. Anybody think that's better? I don't know. So, where'd that go? Oh, there's no notes. All right, so now, where did I go too far? No, okay, so I guess I wanted to change this, right? So I changed cardinality 5, I changed these to interstates, right? No, so it's like, so this example was to be what roads does each jurisdiction have responsibility for, right? So the nation has the interstates, the city has whatever city streets, county has county roads, state has, you know, state highways and all that kind of stuff. Anyway, so it's like, so I can use this same field thingy, or I call it roads, right? But I can change the list up, and then it only applies to whichever one it applies. I couldn't do that with core, right? So let's go back over this and see how have we done against our goals. Let me knock all this water. We have shown, so the first one, we reused storage across 2 different fields. Four of them, I guess, or the body and the rows, right? We've shown both of those where we've reused the storage, right? And they're of the same type. So we've done that particular thing. The second thing, this primitive data type, I'm not going to really touch on that right at the moment, but and we saw that we cloned the field instance, right? We got those field settings and all that stuff worked. And I guess to me, by clarify the fields in the user interface, like that drop down, where is this here? This one. This makes more sense to me. It's like, I really got 4 of those things. Don't I feel like I got 4 of those things, not 1 that I used to have? I do. I mean, and I know which one I'm picking now, and I know what I'm going to get. That to me feels better. But anyway, so that was what where to go. Clarify is, and minimize changes to the contract. You can't really see that, but basically, I'll attest to the fact that the API is, I think, identical. Works differently, but the function calls and stuff, nothing's changed from their standpoint. So most like contrib modules and things that are out there, they would just, you know, life goes on. Nothing really changes for them for the most part. So, did I skip the screen? Okay. So pros and cons, right? I think we get this cleaner separation of storage and field. To me, core muddies up field and instance is kind of the wrong split of things and stuff. So it's really the storage end. You know, you might use Mongo, you might use MySQL, you might use whatever. That's all that storage junk, right? It should just have whatever name it needs to have. But fields are what I want to call them. I should be able to call them and change them however I see fit. And I think we've done that. And one interesting little thing is like you could actually rename a field even if it has data in it, right? And everybody know that, this field has data in it, can't change anything, right? You can't change anything about me. It's like, which I sit there going, huh, really? I do. Not through the UI, but, you know, I do it all the time. But I mean, I can understand why they don't want me to, but anyway.
There's a model for that now, too, I believe.
Could be. There's a model for about everything. So we've eliminated a bunch of database tables, right? So even in our example, we would have had, well, maybe we haven't done there, but, well, I guess the way people typically do these things, those body fields would have been 4 different guys. The road fields would have been 4 different guys. I'd have 8. 8 basic tables plus the revision tables, and I'd only have 2 now. So, I mean, we have cut things down pretty dramatically just with this. And so I guess it feels like it does that. So I guess we talked about the contract, the function signatures, and what they return, and all that stuff. So from a coding standpoint, I haven't really messed with anything. I feel like that what I've done here is the changes are minimal and they're manageable. I mean, using things like Git with its rebase functionality, stuff like that, makes this simple. If you're, I don't know, everybody, who's familiar with using Drush with Drush Make and these, whatnot? Anybody ever put a patch on one of their modules? So like you list your module and say your module views, and I want 3.11, right, as a version, but there's other little goodies you can throw on there. Well, I don't work on anything pretty much that doesn't have something patched, you know, and so you can list these patches to modules, you know, for things that, you know, the committers won't commit, and or you like, or maybe it's really only good for you, but you know, so you can manage all that stuff. I also, in doing all this stuff, so these are the modules that I've changed: core, entity reference, features, relation, and views. And I've updated all the tests. So core test suite, those whatever many thousands of assertions, they all work. All works just fine. There's actually, if you look at the amount of code to change or whatever, the test code's like way more stuff you got to fix. Whereas the number of changes, and I was hoping to have a count of how many lines I actually changed, it's really rather small, but in the actual code, but in the tests, there's a bunch of it. So anyway, so the cons are, everybody says, you know, the first one says it involves patches to core, kind of the trademark thing, don't hack core, right? Don't like to do that, huh? But, you know, you can't make core behave differently, not at this level. You know, all the hooks and all the kind of stuff like that, I don't think you'd have a much harder time of doing what was done. One con here, which you talk about, is that those field names have to be unique. That double underscore A, B, C, something, whatever you'd want to do. That to me is a bit ugly. I just assumed that it was just address and I could reuse it everywhere. But in order to not change this contract, because when a module wants to say what's a field, all it has to pass it is that field name, and so it's got to be unique. And in the new sense, that field is a thing attached to the bundle, so I don't get to pass it to any type of bundle, so I'm stuck with that. But at least in what was done here, this may not be the most accurate slide or whatever, but I think. You know, like when views runs or something like that, you're going to have these queries and whatnot. I don't think you've changed anything there. You're going to probably have the same number of queries. They may just all be hitting the same table. But it does that sort of thing now anyway, in depending on what your data structure is and stuff. So, well, also another suggestion, I guess, with using this is that, so like a lot of times, you know, when we bundle space the field names, a lot of times I see, you know, so it's not only it's image bundle name, but then it's like, well, which image is this? You know, this is for this particular thing or something, and you'd have a bunch of different names. So it's like, if you were going to reuse them like that, I would think I might even just number them. I have an image 1, a 2, a 3, a 4, a 5, and then I can use it on particular bundles. That's the A part. So like if I know I'm gonna, that keeps my names nice and generic, because otherwise you're naming them to one bundle and you just get this kind of ugly looking thing anyway, I think, you know, I mean, they don't really apply to the other bundle. So anyway, no reaction. What would really be cool, which I hadn't done but would be rather trivial, I believe, is that if we added a field name to the storage table. So you remember what the storage tables are, is where your text values and all that kind of stuff. It only has bundles or columns for the entity type and the bundle. So that's as specific as you can get. So you've got to then have one table for each field. But if we put the field name as a column in there, now we got everything we need. I can now, so I said I needed n of each type. I need 1. If I put that field name in that table, because now it's got everything. It tells me, so it's a list text. Oh, it's this particular field on that particular bundle. And I've got everything I need, query against it, bang, boom. And you could put them all in one. You know, if it got to be, you know, you felt like, you know, 3 billion rows was a little much for one table, you could split it up and make a couple more or something. But you could now, is basically, what that says is that however many field types you got, that's how many data tables you need. And from a developer standpoint, that makes sense to me, because it's like maybe to help illustrate that, it's like if you take the flip side, it's like there's a node table in the database, right? It stores all the nodes, all the bundles. How come we don't get a different node table for each bundle? I mean, that to me is the same thing as what was done with the fields. I got all these goofy fields, but they're really the same thing, right? They're all text fields, yeah. So why don't I have node A, node B, node C, all these little tables? I just got node, because they put the type in there, right? You know, I mean, they have a way to distinguish it when they do this stuff. So that would be rather cool, I think, to squish it down, and maybe the next thing I do. But and then, like I said, you could have the ability to override that storage table if, you know, for whatever reason you want to manage it, or, you know, maybe it's in a different database, or it's, you know, a different, you know, one's in Mongo, one's in this, one's in something, right? Anyway. So this is kind of a stepping back, looking back at what it was, kind of where this journey started out. It's like, you know, to not do what we just talked about, but to do kind of a partial change or whatever, would maybe look like moving the cardinality and all those settings onto the instance. So that gets us something. I mean, that's kind of a lot of what we did, but the big hang up of that is that the field name and the storage name. I'm stuck with that name, and that's a big hindrance, I think, because it's like, it's the first one you name. If you try to reuse it, now, like a guy who's writing code, like I said, it's not a widget anymore, it's a baseball, you know, or something. It doesn't relate, it doesn't make sense. And so you've got those problems with it. So you've got all that naming problems and things like that. I don't know. It's like, I don't know if anybody remembers, but it's like, you know, back in the days when computers didn't have all the storage, you know, variables were A, B, C, D. And you try to read that code, wow. That's interesting. What in blazes is it? I mean, that's, in my opinion, I guess, kind of what that's like. So, and while I was at this, just because, I don't know, this was one of those sore spots for me, is like, anybody ever look at the queries that Views runs? You ever run that, you know, preview thing or whatever? And you know what the table alias is? Who knows what that means, right? When it runs a query, so it runs a query, it says, you know, select this stuff from the node table. Well, it's not just the node table. It's like, well, if that was a relationship to 5 other things or whatever, the name of that table is now this long. And I can't read it. I don't know about you, but I cannot scan, you know, about 7,000 characters and try to see what goes together and all that stuff. So while I was doing this, I shortened those aliases down to just like, you know, 1 or 2 characters. I can read that. You know, so A is now called A, you know, or node's called A, and field something is B, and this is C, and all that stuff. So it was just, you know, anyway, this is just kind of an aside, but here's where you get these aliases. Where are they here? Like, so there. I put the underscore in front because I actually ran one and I got up to AS, which is a little problem when you're running SQL queries or whatever, since it's a reserved word, so I stuck the underscore in front. So you get these nice little short things. So this is the kind of thing that we're talking about. It's like you get this big, long name, roads, A, current node, you know, all this crap, and you're like, gosh, I can't read it. Because I'm the guy that's always trying to figure out why isn't the query working? You know, what's not right? And then you maybe got to go debug something, all that stuff. Well, it's downright hard, in my opinion, to read all those long A's and stuff. So that was something we did. Anyway, that I think is about all I got, since the next slide says that. So anyway.
So you have all these patches available for anyone to just grab and use your futuristic field storage model?
They're there. They're not so much available right at the moment, but
Yeah, I wasn't clear on, is it
Part-
something that
part
you
of it is-
built or something that you want?
no, it's there. And I could show you a little demo site that's got the stuff running,
But
but
it's not portable. We can't try this.
well, I haven't put it out in a public spot, no. I mean, so in that sense, I mean, part of this was kind of like, see what interest people had, just like,
What's the
big
feedback
deal.
from board?
Huh?
What's the feedback from board members?
Well, I haven't got any feedback before, but it's like, I mean.
So just a little bit of historical perspective here.
Yeah.
Approximately 2004 to mid-2008 was the debate over whether to store everything in one table per
bundle
type
storage
of data, or to split everything out. And the splitters won that argument, and that's why it is the way it is.
But now, but that, you mean field table or what they call per bundle storage? Like CCK used to put all the.
Yeah.
CCK used to just tack all those fields onto one table, right? Until they go, oh, you want to reuse it? Oh, now we do this magic, and we take that one out, and you get like a field table. Everybody remember? I don't know if you remember that.
I remember that.
Or if you want cardinality, oh, you don't want one, yeah, now we can't keep them all on one table, right? I mean, you run into all kinds of interesting problems. So the field structure, the tables aren't bad, I don't think, but it's kind of how they did it. I think they really, I mean, like I said, I think they've confused what's field and what's instance. Storage field. What are these things? It's not what I think, and I don't think it's what most people, in what you present in the user interface, you call it a field, but it's like what's really going on under there. I think it's confusing.
One of the big goals was to have it not just SQL, right? SQL storage, which is one kind of storage,
Right.
and then we're going to be like 18 kinds of storage, and of course,
That didn't happen.
99% of implementation is still MySQL storage. So.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah. And again, part of this is like, I don't know, this one project I'm working on, it's like there's more coming down the pipe. And it's just going to get worse and worse, and trying to manage all these things. And watching them name them the way they do, it just kind of makes me crazy, It's like, ugh, they get inconsistent with all this stuff. It's like, come on, it's got to have a nice little, pattern to it or something. But anyway, but that's hard to do. Once you make it, you're stuck with it, unless you mess with stuff. But I don't know. I feel like, like I said, there's one node table. It's got all of them in it. So why can't we put all the fields all together? I mean, it's just a column. There's a value column. A lot of times, what they call them, it stores your text or whatever. It's like database don't care. I don't think it's gonna. I mean, would you run into performance issues? Doubtful. I mean, you probably have to get an awful lot of them. I mean, you look at like Facebook, they got.
So I think Examiner
Lots and lots of rules. Huh?
Examiner ran into performance issues because there was a global lock on that data. All the data was in one table, and then somebody's writing to that table, and all of a sudden, you're locked.
Oh.
Jimmy, do you remember anything like that?
No.
No, all right.
I mean, nowadays there's so much caching in front of the database that doesn't matter so much anymore. You can run varnish or something.
Yeah. You're not moving Drupal for a
Go ahead.
I have challenges to most of your assumptions. I don't really have anyone in a question format.
Okay.
But if you would be interested in a discussion later,
Sure.
you might want to do that over lunch.
That'd be a birds not of a feather session, I believe.
Yeah.
None of them are good to touch on right now, or what?
I guess I don't mean this as to debunk all the work that you have put into this, but why did you decide to take the approach of revamping Field API when you could get a lot of what you want by improving the documentation, by improving how instances are communicated, how fields are communicated, and by using form alters for certain things on the interface side for cardinality, and by having naming conventions that you document.
I see some of that, but I don't see. I mean, documenting this doesn't make it better. It just maybe makes it clear as to what it's doing. I think
you're pretty much you're doing the same thing with field bases and aliases and instances.
I don't really have it.
You're just calling it.
I'm putting it.
Entire layer, right? Right now you're artificially.
I understand that we want to store data of the same type in a single table, so that we don't have to remember tables. But there, as you said, there was a years-long discussion on.
That's a different. That was a different.
Per bundle storage is totally different from this, right?
Yeah.
Right, but we're not even talking about. I'm saying the decision to do per bundle or per field, I'm assuming per field has valid points in order for it to have.
But this fits in line with per field. This is not per bundle versus per field. This is still a per field sort of thing.
Right, right, no,
And
and I'm saying that the per field, if you have, 3 different text fields, and you can technically store those in the same table.
There's an issue out there about cardinality, to address your particular point, and it's like, when we've worked on projects, one of our goals as developers was to minimize how much custom code I have. And for me to have a hook alter to change the cardinality is like, you got to be kidding me.
Well,
And I don't take offense to that, but it's like that's like the last thing I would want to do. Because now it's like, now all the guys out here that want to build your site, they can't do it. They got to call you to go set the cardinality thing. Oh, I want to change it from 4 to 5. Now I got to get you involved again. I mean, all that kind of stuff, you don't want it there. You want it up in the UI. So, no.
Right.
Would not go there.
Maybe we should let everybody go and we can just argue.
Hmm.
Or
I'm not going.
staying argument. In terms of, but there's a point as to why cardinality is set at that level.
Is there? There's an issue on it which I commented on, and nobody has disproved it.
Okay, so I can
I
assume
don't-
that there is a point.
I don't buy I don't buy it. Most everybody on the issue was siding with this, and they were even suggesting doing what you said, doing a form alter or whatever to change the cardinality. It's like, good luck that actually trickles down everywhere in all the code that runs, because I can bet you it doesn't.
Well,
But anyway.
my solution to cardinality, I either do my own site, I either do a single value or a limited value. So just default everything to a limited, and if I wanted something to only allow one.
And that's the thing, right? The tables already are unlimited. That's the thing. Or is introducing artificial restrictions for no apparent reason. And if you look at the script modules, there's debates and issues all the time. They're like, do I put the setting from a field or the instance? And there really is no reason to ever put anything on a field other than constrict storage, which is almost nothing. And yet certain things are put there, and then you can never change them again. So that's what this whole thing is, right? You're basically nuking this field thing, which is who knows what. It's this weird thing that you don't actually know what it is. You're nuking it. You're making that the instance, which is actually what the field is. And I put a field on something, right? And then you move any of those constraints, if they did exist, purely to storage. So that's what they are, right?
Yes.
So then now you simplified the whole thing, right? You basically got rid of one piece and you just moved one or two things that are there once in a blue moon to storage, and everything else is now an instance, right?
Those are the changes I can get behind. Everything else that I have more of an issue with.
My
Because
question.
you're doing the same thing.
All right.
My question, are you aware of David Reed's multi-field issue with cardinality? He has a multi-field module, which is a replacement for field collections on much simpler level. And there's a cardinality issue, and he has it listed like in the UI and on the project page. He puts it face forward. I'm thinking, maybe John can back me up, I'm thinking his structure might solve that. In fact, I'm pretty sure it would. Okay, so look up David Reed's issue on multi-field. I think you might just plug yourself and hey, I got a better solution than fix this. If you're so inclined.
Anybody else want to chime in anything in?
Woo!
Okay.
Thank you,
All right.
Jerry. And you're Boom Tower, are you not?
No.
No?
That's
They made one name.
you wouldn't mind saying. This is Boom Tower.
You're Boom Tower. Okay.
This is his name tag, but they didn't get one from me, so anyway. one